The Funk Master dances his way to another victory. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the STAYWEIGHEDIN Podcast. I'm joined by my co-host Ray. How are we doing?
I'm tired. It's been a long night of fight, so yeah. What about yourself?
Literally the exact same thing. I think the two words "I'm tired" just hits everybody in the UK who is watching boxing and UFC and everything else in between.
Boxing, UFC, wrestling, basketball. But for the love of the sport, man, we keep going.
We gotta do it. But hopefully soon we get the UK times and stuff like that. But with that, we are here to recap what we saw at UFC 288. That was Aljamain Sterling beating Henry Cejudo. Split decision. I want your take on that before we go into the fight. Was that a fair decision in itself?
I knew it was going to be tight. I thought that Aljamain banked a lot more strikes in, but I think Henry's one was more impactful. Aljamain is my guy. I picked him to win. My goodness, he has to be one of the most frustrating fighters to watch, because for me, I feel like there's still a level up that he can go. But it's like, brother, you're bigger than him. Why are you? I think even like Matt Serra started telling him off. Like the way he was going for takedowns looked nasty. The fact that you've got the reach advantage and you're not popping your jab at him, like just pop the jab. Like you don't even need to. Like some exchanges, he was getting close to Henry, and then that's how Henry was countering him sometimes. No need. You're the bigger guy. Fight like it. Like, understand, obviously, there's intricacies that only them two in the ring can experience. And I saw, like, Henry was switch up the stance and everything. But part of me just feel like, Aljamain, man, fight smart. Like, you've got all this physical capability. Why are you fighting like that? And that's how I was watching it. And like I said before in the preview show, I'm a big fan of Aljamain. I think he can go a level up. And the irony is, I feel like for the Sean O Malley fight, if he would be open to it, he should train with Henry Cejudo. Because one thing about Henry, the guy is a tactician, and I feel like Aljamain came through on physicality and technique, but he wasn't the technical prowess wasn't so much higher than Henry, but he played to his strength. But I feel like tactic-wise, he needs to up his game, because someone, I think I mentioned it before as well, someone's going to figure out that awkward striking game. And the moment they do, I'm scared for him, because you don't make a fight close like that again, man.
I was going to say, you talked a lot about Aljamain there, but with Henry coming off the three-year layoff, were you impressed with what you saw throughout this entire fight, or was there certain things that you looked at and you were like, okay, we can see that's where the 3 years have hit you a bit?
Especially in the low weight classes, I think there's an age cut where it's like no one becomes champion after this age. And there's a reason in those lower weight classes, how dynamic, the people are built in that weight class. It's hard to be an older person when your body starts to regress. Don't get me wrong, Henry fought a fantastic fight. Could he have done better? Of course, but
I mean, we say this. One judge gave round 5 to Sterling.
yeah,
I believe this was a scorecard. If it went the other way, we'd be sitting here and Cejudo would be champion.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing, because the judge that gave round 5 to Sterling also gave, I think, was either round 2 or 3 to Cejudo. I remember one of those rounds was clearly a Sterling round. So I was just kind of like, it's justice in a sense of, for me, Sterling won the fight. 3-2 minimum. Some people argued 4-1, but it depends on interpretation. For me, the disappointment for me is watching that fight, looking at Sterling like, I know you can do better than that. And I don't know if there's injuries and such. Obviously, every fight has them, but sometimes I watch Sterling frustrating. I'm like, brother, it's almost like you have to ask him, do you know how good you are? Because you do not need to fight the way he was fighting. Like, the way he was going for the double legs was just like, it was slack. Why are you doing that for?
At one point, you alluded to about with the corners as well, and then when you look at him in the ring when he's going for the takedowns, at this point
Mm.
it's just a case of he's forcing it a bit too much. It felt to me because the defense was there. You could see, I think
Yeah,
it was like 3 for 11 at one point, and it was just like
yeah,
you can switch it up and stuff. I do want to talk on the corners because we talk about fighters a lot, and then we never really allude to the corners. And I felt like in this fight, both corners were doing really well to
hmm,
state to both fighters, this is where we think you are on the cards. This is what you need to do. Were you impressed with how both corners were able to communicate with both fighters to give them a sense of realistic, I guess a sense of realism, sorry, in this
yeah,
particular fight as to where they were?
for sure. I think what I liked about Henry's corner was they had their tactic in mind, and then it's almost like they had a plan A, plan B, plan C. So they were telling him at this time, go for this, go for that. Even up in the latter rounds, they were like, listen, this could be 2-2. So you just have to go in there and go for it. Like, don't
I even
chance it.
heard I think there was about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes
Yeah.
left, and they said they had because Henry's corner said Mexican style,
Yeah,
and
just
that
go in
basically just
there.
means just go in for it and go for the kill type of thing. I
Yeah.
think Joe, I want to say Joe even alluded to it as well. He goes, you
Yeah.
can do as much damage as you can in the first 2.5, 3 minutes, but that final 2 minutes is what sticks with the judge's mind as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
think
yeah,
yeah, it
sorry, you
was,
were saying.
no, they were right. Like, just you gotta go for it at that point because they also knew. Like, I think they mentioned, listen, this could be 2-2 or it could be 3-1 to Sterling. You never know because the rounds were tight, and that's what especially a competitor like Henry, that's what he needs to hear. And then he went to try to do it, but you know, good on Aljamain, he managed to neutralize that. Not in the best of ways, but he
Yeah.
did. Whereas Aljamain, I like the fact that. Yeah, Matt Serra especially told him, brother, I do not want to see you on all fours again. Stop with the stupid takedowns. It was just like not setting up his takedowns at all. I'm just like, what? I don't know what you are doing. Like, you're too experienced to be fighting like that. That's my thing. It's not that it's different if you're a young fighter and you're just going for it. I hear it, brother. You're the champion. Act like you're the champion. Like, for me, like I said, it's frustrating because once again, I am not in there. I do not know what injuries he's carrying, etc. But with Sterling, it comes across, it's almost like you're the champion, but you still don't know you're the champion because you're not fighting like it. And what I mean by that is you are the bigger guy. Go in there and impose yourself. I said this in the first Peter Young fight as well. And it took the second Peter Young fight for him to really fight. For me, that's his most impressive performance because that's when he finally realized I'm that guy, and he went in there and fought like it. Whereas this fight, I just felt like he didn't fight like he did in the Young fight. He didn't impose himself like he needed to. And going back to the striking thing again, just like, brother, you've got a longer reach. Use the jab. Like, I love that he mixed up, he put some spinning elbows in there. He
I
didn't
like
do
the
the front
kicks,
kick.
the kicks.
Yeah, the kicks. And I think that's what his corner was calling for. But certain things, it just looked sloppy. And I was just like, the fight management by himself, not like there's a difference between what your corner calls for and what you're applying yourself. And I feel like with Sterling, some of the stuff that he was applying himself, I wasn't a fan of. But, like we said, this is what the corners are there for, to keep you in check.
So this is when I alluded to him being overrated. I think I kind of more alluded to what you were saying here. Even though he's the champ, an element of that star quality domination for me still lacks. And you're kind of saying, I'm trying to say it in a positive spin where it's like you're fighting guys, and as much as um the victory is a split decision or whatever it is, it shouldn't be. And the judges should be upset. We should all be sitting here and saying there's a unanimous victory for you type of thing. And that level of domination just isn't there for me right now.
Yeah.
And again, it could be down to a bit of a lack of belief and stuff because we looked at Leon, for example, and when you go to his second fight with Kamaru Usman, that level of domination
He
is
let
there.
him know he was a champ.
I am that guy. Like
He's
you
him.
might have dominated the first fight, but I'm that guy, and I think that's what we're kind of missing with Sterling.
For sure.
Looking ahead, then, actually, before we look ahead, let's look to the post-fight. And I want to take before I know what you're saying about, but before we do that, I want to look at Henry Cejudo first. And when Joe was interviewing him, because I managed to check out little bits, he did say along the lines of, "Look, if I can't compete for the title, if I'm not number one, I don't know. I may retire, I may not." Do you think we'll possibly see another retirement? Because I know his corner alluded to a specific date. I believe that
Yeah.
was one a UFC card, but also I think on commentary they said when he won the Olympic gold. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think they were going to have another fight then at that particular time, and going in as the champion. Do we see a retirement potentially with Cejudo again on the cards, or
What
just that one final fight?
I think there's no one about the final fight. I think
Hmm.
he wants to see for himself against someone that's not the champion. Has he still got it? So I still think it's a case of the jury's out. I think if he has another fight and he wins, but it wasn't the way he wants to win, then I think he will retire. If he wins in a way that lets him know that I've still got it, then I think he'll go one more run at the title, because Aljamain has also alluded to going up to 145 as well after he beat Sugar Sean. And once again, Aljamain, if you fight like that against Volkanovski, he's going to eat. And for me, like, I feel Aljamain's got all the tools. It's just a matter of how you're applying them. It's almost like it's three categories. Technique is there-ish. Physicality is there. Tactics, I don't know what the hell. It's like at certain times in a fight, it's like you're just going in there on vibes. And that's not totally take away from him, because he did I like the whole switching stances that he was doing. That was very good. Like, you kick one leg, bam, he'll switch stance and then he'll kick you back, which was good. It was just how it's
How
almost
the
like
execution looks rather
the
than the actual
execution
execution.
at times. I think that's the one. The execution at times wasn't the greatest, and when he applied certain tactics, wasn't the greatest. And I feel like if he sharpens up his execution, he can be a problem.
So let's talk about next for Sterling then. It's kind of there written Sean O Malley. This particular fight, you touched on the reach against Cejudo. In this one,
Mhm.
we ain't going to see that. You got two tall guys here and
Yeah.
stuff. What can we expect from this fight, and what type of performance will one Sterling have to give, but also Sean himself?
You see, Sugar Sean, I'm sure he's been working on it. And at the same time, how he performed against Peter Yan scares me for Sterling now. But this is a guy that's in the striking department is better than Sterling.
Hmm.
But in the Peter Yan fight, he showed that if you think you're just going to grab me and drag me to the ground, it's not going to be like that. Don't get me wrong, Peter Yan's grappling is not the same as Sterling, because Sterling, even against Henry, managed to get his back. He didn't get to do as much. He didn't get to advance as much, but he still managed to wrestle with Henry a bit. So that's in a positive light on Aljamain, that, listen, if you can do that to Cejudo, if you can do that to Yan, he can do it to anybody in the division. But Sugar Shane has still shown that he's got aspects of his game that people underestimate him for. So Aljamain's got to go in there, obviously looking to grapple. If my thing is, it can either go two ways. It's either going to go the way of the Sanhagen fight, where maybe first, second round finish for Aljamain. I think he could go in there and make a statement against Sugar Shane. That guy, the way he's built, is built, no pun intended, for Aljamain. Go in there, grab a limb, and then either take his back and choke him, or take one of his limbs home. That's why Aljamain can go in there. If Sugar Shane goes into that fight with improved takedown defense, it is going to be a long night for Aljamain, because if you strike like that, the way he did with Henry, and you try to do it with Sugar Sean, he's going to piece you up. So you better come correct, because Sugar Sean, after seeing how he fought against Yan, I'm like, before I weren't a believer, now I'm just like, that boy might just be the truth. And if Aljamain's not careful and you want to go in there with wayward tactics again, boy, it could be a long night for him.
Is this then, just looking ahead, is this a fight that should excite UFC fans going forward?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Especially they got this weird thing where everyone wants to act like he's not in full Tyron Woodley territory, but he's approaching it because it's weird. People have this thing where it's like I was saying about Boatsy in the other episode. People either love you or hate you. Do not get to the point where they don't care, or they just don't like you. Because not liking someone and hating someone is two different things. Hate can still equal money. Not liking someone just means that you just
don't care. Like,
yeah,
he's there, but it's not a problem for me. I don't need to watch.
Do not step into not liking territory. And I feel like Aljamain, I like this kind of, he's doing like a heel anti-hero turn. The way you can tell like his temper flared up a bit. He was like stood on his, and this is what I mean about him being a champ. He stood on the fact that, yo, don't come into my octagon talking that stuff when you ain't done what I've done. That's what I need to see, that attitude in the octagon now. I like that. Stop giving us happy-go-lucky Aljamain. Obviously, at times, be multifaceted. I also like how
don't force it. Don't force it.
Because I liked how he alluded to the fact that I'm not going to go in here and pretend to be a tough guy. But being a tough guy doesn't mean you can't stand your ground. And that's what he done in the octagon when Sugar Shane tried to chat rubbish to him. And I like that. So I want to see that more from Aljo, but then more of a killer instinct and more bear tactics applied.
I think you alluded to one thing before we wrap up is I mentioned about execution and you touched on killer instinct. And I feel like in the last few fights, that's kind of just been missing, that killer instinct. It is a case of I'm happy to bank rounds and know I'm ahead to a certain point. But yeah, just want to touch on the core main event itself before we wrap up. Belal Muhammad getting the victory over Gilbert Burns. Are you surprised with how this fight kind of planned out and also the result?
It hurt me, man, because this was my biggest fear going into that fight.
The slip-up fights. We always say in boxing as well, 50-50 slip-up fights. Do you need to make this fight? Do you need to? But unfortunately, both had to in this particular case.
It's not even about the slip-up per se. It's more about the quick notice and 5 rounds. My thing is, this didn't need to be 5 rounds. I'm sorry. It did not need to be 5 rounds. Hopefully, they got paid more for doing 5 rounds. It didn't need to be 5 rounds. Especially one side, you got Belal coming off of Ramadan and not being in training camp. And then the other hand, you've got Gilbert who
just fought on the last card.
Yeah, just fought on the last pay-per-view card. Brother, your body's probably been through the ringer. And this was the point where his body was just like, nah. Like, especially getting older as well. And I feel like they were saying second round, Gilbert's left arm just gave out. And he was fighting like, 3.5 rounds of without a proper left arm. And I think just the wear and tear caught up with Gilbert. Like, this is his 3rd fight in the year. This is why when people ask, oh, I don't understand why these fights can't fight more, brother.
3 fights in 5 months. Like.
The wear and tear on the body. That's why even like someone like Izzy is a special breed, because the duration duration is the word I'm looking for. But basically the amount of time that Izzy fights is supernatural. And for that, he should be commended, because very few people, especially in his position, should be fighting like that. Whereas Gilbert, I just feel like he just bit off more than he can chew. Like, that turnaround for me was too much. I don't know what injuries he was carrying, but, kudos to him. I hope he got compensated handsomely for what he done, because he saved that event. And in all honesty, shout out to Belal as well, because he deserved this. He deserved this more than Kobe. The fact that him and Leon have history, he's also doing this heel turn thing as well. It's like to go into a wrestling thing. He's not like Kobe is JBL. He is just a wanker who's just going to portray a wanker, and he knows it. Belal is like, I can't think of an old school reference, so I'll go new school. Apologies to people that don't watch latest type of wrestling. He's like Dominic Mysterio right now, what Belal's doing. He's just any type of cheap heat he can take to dig at the crowd, he's taking it, and I like it.
I absolutely love the wrestling analogies were perfect. I just sat back and I was like, let me see this, and I was like, this is top tier.
That is getting good cheap heat in a good way, because Bilal's now getting into that category of, before people just didn't care. Now he's getting to the category of, you're either going to love me or hate me, but you're going to pay attention now. And that's what I like for Bilal. And now my guy Leon Edwards is becoming the face that they need to push. And I feel like Leon can go on a good run. I think he beats Kobe. I definitely think he can beat Bilal. Shavkat Rakhmonov will be the interesting next fight. But I feel like Leon can beat him now. I think maybe in the future, in a rematch, Shavkat might get him. But I feel like now Leon can beat him. So for me, keep on pushing Leon as the face. If the UFC smart, give him the money and do the big stadium fight against... For me, that's what they should do. Big stadium fight, Leon, Bilal. If he gets past Kobe, it's right there. It's literally right there.
This is the thing. So it's there where the conditions permitted.
Cardiff.
What? I hear that. I hear Cardiff. Okay, I can give you Cardiff. I can give you Cardiff. That's fair enough.
Stadium, like what? I don't know who in the UFC brass is moving mad, yeah. Brother, let Leon fight Kobe and what he wants to fight in Abu Dhabi, isn't it? Because he wants to heal up and have a proper camp. Go to Abu Dhabi, cool. Fight Leon. If Leon gets through Kobe, him versus Bilal, Cardiff Stadium, indoor, bam. If he gets past Bilal in Cardiff, then I'm sure that will lead to the summer in the UK. Then you can do Brum or you can do Wembley. It is right there. You can push Leon as a face. This, for me, is the British-Jamaican GSP, or Jamaican-British, shall I say. Jamaican-British GSP for me. Right there.
I hear it. I'm always about that, where you've got entities in America that do well in arenas, but bringing them over here is just going to be on a different level, and I think it'll sell as well. But that's one of them things where we got to wait on Dana to sort out, and we know the politics there anyway.
Call me Dana, man.
Booker Ray. But we're going to wrap up today's episode of the Stay Waiting Podcast. As always, if you enjoyed the content, drop a like, share, subscribe. Road to 2K now, since everybody's done everything I needed for 1K. Now we're going for 2K, but also go back and check our video on Canelo and Ryder and let us know your thoughts as well in that particular fight as well. As always, we appreciate you for coming on. And as always, guys, stay waiting.